welcome to the special transmission on COP-27 and Prime Minister's visit to Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. Because this event, COP-27, is very important because A, it is about climate and Pakistan is a victim of climate change. Secondly, this time around, COP-27, even before it started, they have included one item in agenda, that is climate justice financing. It was not there before, and we know that during COP26 in Glasgow, there were attempts to actually include it in the list, but then at that time, the richer nations prevailed and it was vetoed out. They wanted 3 years for deliberation. Since then, a lot has changed, from fires and heat waves in Europe and UK to floods in Pakistan. And we are going to talk about all those things. Remember, Prime Minister's visit is important also because he is going to participate. He is leading a high-level delegation of ministers and officials, and that is not all. In Sharm el-Sheikh, apart from COP27, on the sidelines, he is going to participate actually, he is going to co-chair a round table with his Norwegian counterpart, that is on climate change and vulnerability of communities. That is something that is very close to our heart because, you know, 1/3 of Pakistan is badly affected by floods. The second very important event that he is going to attend is UN Secretary General's roundtable. It is titled Early Warning Systems for Executive Action Plan. That is also important. And then Pakistani Prime Minister is also going to participate in Middle East Green Initiative Summit, which is being hosted by his Saudi counterpart and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. We are going to talk about the expectations from this. In the past, we know that after Kyoto Protocol, the world had given up on any kind of climate action. Then after quite some time, we saw in 2015 COP21 called Paris Agreement, and in Paris Agreement it was agreed that the global temperatures have to be actually brought down to the level of 2 degrees compared to the pre-industrial era, and if possible to 1.5 degrees. That doesn't seem to be happening so far, but that is one agenda item that has been kept within view. Pakistan, as I pointed out, is badly affected by floods, and we are going to take stock of where we are at. There was a World Bank survey, and so far the number that we are hearing is somewhere around $33 billion that might be needed for rehabilitation and reconstruction and climate endurance. Whether there will be any kind of motion in that context, we have to ask that as well. If you are a foreigner watching Pakistani television channels and you think that Pakistani screens are not showing the victims of floods that are massive, then you only have to realize that don't worry about it, because that is the nature of the beast. Pakistani media is what Douglas Adams once called a bug bladder beast of trawl, a beast that is so silly it thinks that it can't. If you can't see it, it can't see you. So if you are flood affected, our media cannot see it. Don't worry, we are here for you. We are going to focus on all these matters and more. What to expect from this very important climate summit, and what exactly is there for Pakistan to get out of this. In order to help us understand these issues in the studio, I am joined by Waqar Shirazi Saab, who is a disaster response expert, senior development activist. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Dr. Ijaz Ahmed, who is Senior Program Fellow, Institute of Urbanism, Islamabad. I don't know whether our third guest who joins us on Skype is with us. I'm told that he is. Dr. Asif Javed, environmental scientist, also joins us. Dr. Saab, thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Let me start with the studio. Waqas Shirazi Saab, what do we expect from COP27?
Many thanks indeed, Pitafi Saab, for having me here today. Well, COP27 is the international summit to help combating the climate-induced changes which is affecting the life at Earth. And this time it is in the name of COP27, since it is the 27th summit of the forum. The first one was carried out in 1995, and it is the 27th one now at the moment. There are four major areas where the international leadership from about 200 countries and 30,000 delegates in the conference would be discussing about four major areas that include the adaptation, mitigation, finance, and the transition. But most importantly, as you have mentioned, the financial justice associated to climate change, because finance is the driving force in the world, we all know, and there is no doubt about that. Primarily, the basic objective was, as per the Warsaw Declaration or the Paris Declaration in 2015, that the rich countries would be providing the poor countries with finances to combat the changes, the climate changes, and to help increasing the resilience and to help fighting the catastrophes associated to the climate changes. But it was not decided that where these finances would be generated from, how these finances would be transformed or transmitted to the poor countries, and who will be providing the amount.
So this time it can happen?
I think it's a $1 million question,
because the UN Secretary General has called for $100 billion fund.
Yeah.
That seems to be a big call, right?
Beyond that, it has also been estimated by UN that if we want to reach the goal of zero carbon emission by 2030, we'll be needing $4 trillion a year. Now, who will be providing these $4 trillion from now to the upcoming years? It is a big question.
Right, so, absolutely. Allow me to actually include Dr. Ijaz as well. Dr. Ijaz, before I come to you, let me read Prime Minister's tweet that he posted before actually going abroad. There was a thread. This is the third tweet, which is important. Our post-disaster needs assessment has shown that Pakistan's journey to recovery and rehabilitation can be held back by public debt, rising international energy, food prices, and lack of access to adaptation funds. The world should treat Pakistan as a case study. Pakistan somehow has become, Dr. Saab, Exhibit A in climate effect. Do tell us what to expect for Pakistan out of this summit.
I think we should be very realistic. And looking at the history and the behavior of the developed countries, we should not expect much, because we know that most of the time big heavy commitments are done, but ultimately when it comes to the contribution, nothing happens. I think if we are able to develop a mechanism during this COP, it will be a big achievement. And it seems that the developed countries are still not. It was very difficult to include this as part of the agenda. It only happened yesterday. So I think there is, of course, there are lobbying going on, but I think it will take time. So although that we have gone through the disaster, not only in Pakistan but also in the region and in Europe now, as you mentioned earlier.
So even in the US, there are floods.
Exactly.
But none of the other countries is 1/3 underwater. Like Pakistan is facing that kind of challenge, and there are people who are still actually displaced because of that. So that becomes a humongous. But on one side, you're saying that even having $100 billion reserve for all climate action or justice is a big ask. On the other side, Pakistan needs somewhere around $33 billion. Some say even 40.
Yeah.
So how do you actually round that circle? That square?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, I think even if we develop a mechanism that who will be eligible, what will be the basic requirement for securing these funds, what will be the criteria, I think these things will develop and it will take time. And this,
how much time?
I would say 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5
So
years.
because
Make
that
it 8 and we'll reach the cut-off date for 2030, right?
Right, and that's normally what happens in international negotiations, because you know, like next time they are going to meet will be November 2023.
Yeah.
So during this time there will be certain dialogues, discussions among different groups. But I think Pakistan has a little advantage in the sense that they are chairing the Group 77, which is a big force.
G77, yeah, Pakistan is head of that right now.
So that is a big force which will influence the international players as well.
Right. Let me bring in the third guest who joins us on Skype, Dr. Asif Javed. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Let me ask you, at this moment, Pakistan is really suffering. I'm sure that there are other parts of the world which are actually badly affected by climate change as well. What should we expect from COP27, and what can Pakistani Prime Minister do to advocate our cause?
Thank you, Katafi. What I believe this COP27 is very important. As Shirashi mentioned, that this is 27th summit since 1995. And if you look at the name of this summit, it says Sharm el-Sheikh Climate Implementation Summit. So we expect that discussion will be more focused on the implementation sides from all the parties, from all the country leaders, and focus should be, I believe, towards the Pakistan, because Pakistan has recently suffered a massive flood. But the important point which I want to make it here is we need to ask, our Prime Minister need to ask for compensation of climate change, not just restrict the discussions to the floods or things like that. And rather we should better use the words compensation instead of aid and money paying off loans or something like that. And we should also ask for compensation for climate change, not only for floods. Because, after some time you will face severe drought condition maybe, and there are many other devastation which are likely to happen in next few couple of years in Pakistan. Yes, $33 billion is a big amount, and we'll see how we'll get that amount. But the important thing is we need to formulate a clear mechanism in our own country to channelize all these funds, to tap out these funds from the international community, and this is the right forum, as I mentioned, name indicate. And it also includes the roundtable meeting discussions with for early warning system. That's also good forum to highlight clearly what kind of warning systems they will develop for Pakistan, how to go about it. So these are the things, important things. But,
right.
But I believe
Dr. Saab, one question that comes to mind, because you have just flagged the early warning systems and their need. We have been hearing that there were systems in place, but even then Pakistan could not do much about the floods. If that is true, what exactly needs to be done within the country?
Exactly. There are two set of policies. We need to clearly formulate the policies for our adaptation. We need to make a resilient system. Like, for example, this is our fault, basically, why we allow the building on the floodplains, why we allow the hotels on the floodplains. We should clearly zone out the areas which are near to the floodplains so that flood water will not damage all those entities. It requires formulation of clear policies and all those things. And early warning system. In case of floods, we can take 100 years of record, and based on that record, we can say this area is safe and this area is not safe. which can clearly identify the floodplain. So it's all about the implementation side by the government of Pakistan to enforce strictly all these laws and regulations to minimize the damage from these kind of extreme climatic events like floods particularly. So this is this is urgent need of a time.
And the fact is, we don't know whether this kind of occurrence is going to take place every year, or it is going to take place after some time. So it becomes very important.
Even if it doesn't take place, the state is a very good principle in environmental sciences that's called precautionary principle. We can still take precautions if we are not sure this thing is going to happen in future. But on a precaution side, we can prevent ourselves. We can prevent our community from damages of life and property. Something
absolutely,
like that.
Dr. Saab, I was merely referring to the possibility that in the end we might end up doing something that is temporary work. And the fact is that we have to actually invest in climate endurance. Let me come back to the studio. Shirazi Saab, you have during the floods and after that traveled far and wide. And you must have seen what exactly went on. Can you tell us what exactly were the contributing factors that sunk us?
Because as you have mentioned that 1/3 of Pakistan was submerged by the massive floods, and it was a combination of flash floods plus waterlogging everywhere in the country. So the damages were massive. These were higher than the damages we observed in 2010 floods. Unprecedented scale.
Both the banks of river were actually flooded.
Yeah, but it comes under the umbrella of capacity of mitigation for any country.
Right.
And mitigation is one of the main thematic areas of the COP-27 conference. But either it is mitigation, either it is transition, which is about the capacity of renewable energy.
You're going to the bigger picture, right? I'm bringing you back to Pakistan.
I'll come back to it.
I just want to understand, was it drainage problem? Was it something else that actually caused this waterlogging and flooding?
I'm coming to the same. So what I'm trying to say is that either it is mitigation, or it is adaptation, or it is a capacity lag. It needs finances.
Okay.
And the international community has committed the poor countries that they would be providing the finances in terms of the climate finance justice, which has been constantly mentioned by our foreign minister, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari.
And our Prime Minister as well.
And our Prime Minister as well. So it is on the table, on the agenda, that we would be raising this to the international community, that we cannot do much without the financial assistance of the international community. Yes, we lagged in terms of planning. We lagged in terms of creating infrastructure for mitigation and response. But this too needs financial assistance, because Pakistan is combating with the financial problems at the moment, and we don't have any financial backing to...
No, that point is made. My problem is, if you come to me for some kind of cure, right? And you need any assistance regarding your treatment, first of all, you have to tell me what is wrong. You can talk about glaciers melting, but that is not going to be fixed. You know, you can talk about a lot of other things, but you'll have to identify 2 or 3 key things. One, perhaps drainage system. The second one, how our population has actually gathered around, banks or rivers, and that might also be a big problem.
Well,
what exactly is
the exact thing is that it was not a total failure of the absence of the infrastructure. The world agreed that it was a climate-induced calamity in Pakistan. So had there been a massive infrastructure there, the losses would be relatively lower, but there would be losses in Pakistan. So right at the moment, our case, what we want to plead to the international community is that we are suffering because of the carbon emissions of the rich countries of the world. It is not a problem that is induced by Pakistan or which is induced by the Africa.
I totally get that.
Yes.
There are factors which further contribute to a problem. And Dr. Ijaz, this is what I want to understand. You must have assessed what exactly is wrong in the infrastructure. Drainage was a big issue, right? Because it was said that Pakistan South is clogged because of lack of drainage system. Then there is concern how population, Sabak pictures and all, how people were settled so close to water that actually devastated their lives. What are the problems? What is wrong with us? If you are telling it to the doctor, is our kidney broken? Is there some problem with the brain or heart or something else?
I think we need to actually see what are we doing by like understanding the issues which is related to the management of the whole flood. There are legal instruments which are available. Encroachment of the floodplain was one of the major reason. Because you know that about a year ago in Islamabad, E11, there was a big disaster where 4 people died. And what was the reason? Encroachment. Because the people have encroached the way of the river or the flood, and ultimately the channels, and ultimately the size of the channel reduced about 80 to 90%.
Right.
So,
but I understand when you're talking about a place like Islamabad, of course, there are nalas which can be treated in the end. Where cities are actually established, for example, Nowshera itself is right in the face of such a flood, right? And that becomes a problem. Same is the case with southern Punjab, some parts of Balochistan, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. What do you do there? You cannot shift the entire population.
Yes, you cannot. But like the encroachment of the riverbed, we can remove those encroachments, because river has its own huge area, and most of the riverbeds in KP, in Punjab, in Sindh, even in Balochistan, they have been actually encroached by either by establishing housing colonies or by developing it. The infrastructure, I think we need to look into that aspect as well, because we need to have water storage structures. Which can actually
micro to macro, we have to have all the solutions. Right?
We need to.
But what exactly is wrong with southern Pakistan, because that was where water actually gathered, right? Is it essentially the drainage system that goes off? How old is the drainage system?
I think the drainage system was one of the issue, but was one of the problem. But in addition to that, the early warning systems, I think that the early warning system in the northern part of Pakistan, they worked quite well. That's one of the reasons that we don't have that kind of mortality over there. But people,
it is also higher ground.
It is, but then there are more risky areas, because it's more fragile ecosystem, and then chances of like any calamity is very high. But what happened that in southern part of Pakistan, in South Punjab, in KP, and also in Sindh, people knew that the flood is coming. And it took about a month, 15 days to a month's time, that they started, like getting these flood water from upper catchment areas. But there was very little information about displacement, about how to move from one place to another, and ultimately people
and how to divert water as well, because that became an issue, a political issue.
And here comes some of the infrastructure that we need to look into. There are natural-based solutions which are available. You can identify certain water bodies or wetlands where you can divert the flood water. Even we are facing acute shortage of water at the moment, and the underground water table has gone down. So we need to look into some of the recharge areas where we need to like have more water and water level.
Absolutely. Let me take the same question to Dr. Asif Javed as well. Dr. Saab, your prognosis so far, what exactly needs to be done? We keep on talking about how the world should focus on these matters, which is very important. But have we identified what is wrong with the situation on ground and how to fix it?
I think yes, definitely. First of all, if in case of floods, if we are talking about floods, then rightly mentioned the earlier speaker, floodplain encroachment is the main issue which has intensified the floods or intensified the damages damages could have been much less if we have proper floodplain regulations. So first top priority should be the floodplain regulation. We can go for ecotourism. We can make ecotourism, parks, so that it can help the water to soak into the ground, to also overcome the problem of groundwater recharge. It is, Pakistan has already been declared as a water-scarce country. So obviously, after this flood, repeatedly I am saying that we might face a severe drought condition. Then we will try for water after that. That is also climate-induced action. Secondly, Pitlafi, the important thing is that now if we talk at international forum, world has now clearly realized that these floods are not as a natural phenomenon. It is clearly as a result of wrongdoing or carbon emissions of the West or technically advanced countries, I would rather say. And world have seen all these devastation. Many world leaders have come. So in this conference, people have gathered right now, and world leaders are there, so they can make pledges, they can make a plan to how to channelize the money from the developed nations to the Pakistan, and we need to develop a proper mechanism in our own country, how to use that money, where to use that money, how to, as I don't mention, early speaker said that in the Sindh, even people were aware, but still there's you see the lack of coordination between the authorities, and people could not move out of the area, maybe because of the intensity of the flood. I'm not sure about that, because there was a very intense flood. As Sindh and Balochistan, they are at the downstream, and water from all over the Himalayas hills and Balochistan hills and Punjab converge in the Sindh. So definitely there will be large quantity of water, and as the earlier speaker mentioned that we have a weak drainage system also, so it takes more time to drain out the water. But right. The most important thing is the world have now realized, so we need to formulate the clear policies. Either it should be on the mitigation side or it should be on the adaptation side, and worlds need to provide us the funds more for the adaptation side, so that we can adapt ourselves to the climate induced disaster, basically.
Right. Dr. Saab, two follow-up questions. Regarding Pakistan's domestic plan, I remember that at COP-27 it was agreed that by 2020 each country will actually submit a plan, a natively developed plan for action regarding climate change. And that was actually submitted around COP-25. But that is one aspect. Then after that also we have been actually advocating this. Do you think that our climate action plan that we submitted needs some kind of update, because it is supposed to be submitted after every 5 years? And secondly, regarding climate and drainage and infrastructure, let me ask you, Balochistan is 44% of Pakistan's land mass. And there, if you have seen the early pictures that came out, at that time, the kind of flooding was there. The infrastructure seemed only primitive, really old. Do you think that Balochistan has even more frail infrastructure compared to the rest of Pakistan, or is it systemic and endemic, sir?
First of all, I will comment on the climate action plan. Yeah. Obviously, we need to have a very good, clear, updated climate action plan. If we don't have any action plan, obviously we will not be able to convince the world where we are going to spend the money, how it could be spent on all those things. And yes, Balochistan land is 45% of the area, so I think so. I don't have a very clear idea about that, but certainly I would say Balochistan, there is a lot of potential in the Balochistan land particularly, and lot of culturable waste I have seen in the Balochistan personally, and also in the Sindh, land that is not utilized, maybe due to the lack of water or some other reasons, there might be something. So, Pitafi, we need to be very clear about what we are talking about, how to go about the issue, and being a water management expert or environmental scientist, it is very painful when even one drop of water go to the sea without utilization. And you have seen in the floods, cusics and billions and cusics of water have gone into the Arabian Sea after after devastation. So this is really painful. So this is the right time that we need to highlight these issues at international forum. Every time there should be clear coordination between scientists, media groups, and political parties, because these are the scientific issues. So we need to look forward for the scientific, solutions. Environment, water, they don't have any boundaries. So beyond that, we also need to improve our geopolitical situation with our neighboring countries, because they are also facing the same type of problems.
Right.
You may recall that India and Bangladesh was underwater 2 weeks before or 3 weeks before when the flood hit.
Parts of India are still underwater, even today.
Yes.
Yeah, recent floods and all. That is very, very serious questions, but somehow India and Pakistan, instead of working together, keep on adding to the burden by, weaponizing Siachen Glacier, which keeps on getting affected as well. Let me come back to
if we collectively raise our voices will be properly heard and responded to. That's the most important thing.
Sir, that is true, sir. But we keep on advocating the need for peace between India and Pakistan, and it seems that the Indian government doesn't seem to be in the mood. So, what can we do regarding that? Let me come back to Shirazi Saab. Sir, there are two questions that I raised in the end. One is regarding, Balochistan and the kind of infrastructure that we saw. It seemed totally, devastated already, and some kind of decaying kind of infrastructure. And then we also saw that how quickly it was just swept away by water. Is it that some parts of the country have not been able to upgrade their infrastructure? And the second question was regarding the climate action goals. What can we actually do to update them?
I think that it has appeared and it has been proven by the calamity that the infrastructure lacked the minimum standard which we had to observe to create a disaster resilience and to turn a challenge into an opportunity. And because of that damage, many of the fields, the orchards, and the cultivable areas were swept away by the floods. Along with the household damage and the cattle's losses and the losses of precious lives as well.
I get that. But I'm talking about suppers. I'm talking about dams that just disappeared before our eyes in seconds.
Yes, as I said, that we lacked in maintaining the minimum standard. Yes, we also lacked in ensuring the accountability and monitoring mechanisms that would have ensured the quality of infrastructure. But not in terms of only dams, but there would have been an infrastructure of diverting the waters of 3 major rivers to rest of the 3 rivers. Then we would have turned this challenge into an opportunity. And let me add, in terms of disaster risk response, we were also lacking the basic preparations in terms of providing the refuge to the people, and in terms of
why is it that every time some disaster strikes, we are always lacking in response?
I think it is our failure in totality in terms of providing